There are many aspects to communication. There's how you listen to your partner when she's feeling stressed or overwhelmed. There's how your partner listens to you when you're talking about something very important to you. And then there's how you talk through difficult subjects. When couples say they communicate well, they usually mean they're able to talk through difficult subjects while staying calm, kind, and loving. They don't attack each other, and they speak responsibly about what they're feeling without blame or shame. They don't raise voices, and they certainly don't hit below the belt. If that describes your relationship, then you're already experiencing an aspect of relationship greatness. But if not, if you find yourselves escalating and attacking each other and then retreating to your corners to lick your wounds, or complain to your friends about your partner, this section is for you. Before we talk about how to avoid escalating a conflict, there's a step to take that cools the flames of conflict before they even begin. Based on 40 years of research, Dr. John Gottman is able to predict whether or not a couple will stay together or divorce based on one factor: their ratio of positive interactions to negative. This is from the Gottman Institute's blog at gottmanblog.com. Balance does not mean a 50-50 equilibrium. Dr. John Gottman charted the amount of time couples spend arguing versus interacting positively, touching, smiling, paying compliments, laughing, etc., and found there is a very specific ratio that exists between the amount of positivity and negativity in stable relationships. The magic ratio is 5-to-1. In other words, as long as there are 5 times as many positive interactions between partners as there are negative, the relationship is likely to be stable. It is based on this ratio that Dr. Gottman is able to predict divorce. Very unhappy couples tend to have more negative than positive interactions. The bottom line, even though some level of negativity is necessary for a stable relationship, positivity is what nourishes your love. So on the one side, you have the couple that is basically kind and warm. There's some negativity, and some is necessary to keep a couple on track. But the overall pool of the relationship is positive and warm. If you've had the privilege of being around a couple like this, you'll feel a palpable sweetness between them. The common myth is that the sweetness is just magically there by some lucky combination or chemistry, but the truth is that those couples likely implement skills, either consciously or naturally, that keep that positive to negative ratio in a healthy balance, which then allows the flow of love to remain unobstructed. On the flip side, you have the couple stuck in a cycle of bickering and negativity. I often talk in my work about the pervasive and almost addictive need to nag and control that I see in my work. If you're aware that you have a tendency to nag, remind, criticize, control, comment, suggest, it's time to practice zipping the lip. And if this is your habit, it will definitely be a practice to contain that need to nag. You may come from a long line of naggers, in which case the habit runs deep in your genes. And it's worth saying that even suggestions communicated in a kind, soft voice are often received as a criticism and are more subtle forms of control. We'll talk in a few minutes about how to bring up real issues that need real conversation. But for now, try to fill the pool of your relationship with positive comments and interactions and notice the effect that it has. So here's a common scenario. You're getting breakfast ready for the kids before you have to leave for work, and your partner puts her dirty dish in the sink. You're feeling rushed and tense, and you feel the familiar irritation like an army of ants crawling over your skin. Unkind thoughts race through your mind. Can't you see that I'm trying to get things cleaned up here? How can you be so thoughtless and toss your dirty dishes in the sink? You're so self-absorbed. You're always thinking about you and your needs. What about me? You have 2 choices in that moment: to say something snappy or to hold your tongue. Which one do you think will lead to conflict? Even if there's truth to what you're feeling, giving voice to it in a moment when you're emotionally triggered will likely only trigger a defensive response in your partner, and the two of you will be off and running in an argument. In scientific terms, your amygdala which is in the back of your brain, will trigger your partner's amygdala. And once that happens, once the fight or flight part of your brain is activated, you're basically incapable of speaking rationally or calmly. Conflict isn't about the subject. It's about what happens when two people are emotionally triggered. It's not about the dirty dishes or helping out with the kids. It's about your irritated reaction triggering your partner's defensiveness and then escalating from there into a painful argument where you both end up saying things that you don't mean. Most issues can be resolved in less than 5 minutes when both people are open. If one of you isn't open, it will likely escalate into an unproductive and potentially harmful conflict. So there are 4 steps to avoid escalating conflict. And I'll say here that these steps are simple to understand, but difficult to implement at first. Over time, like any new habit, they will become easier, but be kind to yourself as you start to practice this new way of handling your own and your partner's reactivity. Step 1 is to learn your own and your partner's trigger signs. What happens for you when you feel triggered? Do your muscles tense? Do you feel burning in your legs? Do your thoughts start racing? Write down your trigger signs so that you can identify when you're in a triggered state more quickly. How do you know when your partner is triggered? Does her voice change? Is there a look in her eye? Does she withdraw physically? Most couples are so sensitized to each other's subtle and physical and emotional cues that they can tell in a matter of seconds if something is off with their partner. The danger at that point is to approach your triggered partner and ask, "Are you mad at me?" If you sense that your partner is triggered, the most loving action you can usually take is to give her or him some space. If you know your partner is simply stressed and it has nothing to do with you, you could choose to approach your partner using his or her love language. But a stressed or overwhelmed response is different than a triggered response, and it's important to be able to discern between the two. Step 2 is to disengage lovingly. As soon as you notice that one of you is triggered, it's time to disengage. Disengage could mean that you stop the conversation and focus on something else. It could mean that you walk away. It could mean that you sit down and take a few deep breaths. Ideally, you would say something like, "I'm feeling triggered, and I don't think it's a good time to talk, but I'll be back in 20 minutes. But when you're triggered, it's almost impossible to say something as responsible as that. If you're going to try to implement these steps and you've never done anything like this before in your relationship, it can help to explain to your partner before a triggered moment what you're planning on trying as a way to set the stage. If you have a habit of blurting out every negative comment that comes to your mind, this might be challenging for you, as you'll literally be carving new pathways in your brain based on restraint instead of impulse. As soon as you notice that you're triggered, you'll need to send a mental note to your brain with messages like, "Hold it in, don't speak, show restraint." You can try counting to 10 or breathing to the count of 10 if it feels like the words are going to come tumbling out of you. Remember that not everything has to be communicated or resolved right away, and that the chances of the conversation